If you haven't listened to part 1, part 2, or part 3, listen to them in that order 1, 2, and 3 before continuing with this part 4. Okay, violence. Violence is, first of all, an attitude. It's the attitude of those in the world. Now listen carefully. All born again people were used to be unbelievers. Okay? Now, unbelievers are all unbelievers. There are different categories and different degrees in unbelief, but they're still unbelief. Okay? Yet you have what we call the sinner, and you have what you call the wicked or the reprobate. You see, we were all sinners before we became born again. You see, some of us were really wicked. Okay? The difference between a sinner and the wicked is because a wicked individual or a reprobate, it's someone that's that's a narcissist basically. And then you have the what we call sociopaths, psychopaths. They fall into the same category, demonic individuals. Okay. About violence, we already discussed that in the world, all things consist out of false information. Though the false information will always lead to discontent. You see, but there's another thing that false information leads to, and that's false entitlement. And it's false entitlement that produces violence. Okay? Because let's use a logical illustration here. You say that the Most High does not exist, or that the Most High does exist, but he doesn't care about you, nor that he's concerned with what's happening with you, nor what's happening on earth. If that's true, that the Most High isn't real, or that he is real but he doesn't care about you, then it means that you have to look after yourself. That also includes that know that all human beings are basically without hope and they need to figure things out on their own. And that means that there is no objective right and wrong, because there's no final authority that determines what is right or wrong, or that is exercising justice on behalf of the inhabitants of the earth. So that means that the strongest, the one with the most resources, who has the access to the most resources, they are the ones determining what's happening. So that's where false entitlement comes from. A false entitlement is any entitlement that's birthed out of false information. Because the truth is that God is the creator and the owner of the whole universe. The truth is that we human beings are spirit beings with souls living in bodies, so we're spirit entities. Therefore, we need to be at peace with the Creator. Without Jesus Christ in our lives, we have no peace, no contentment. When you recognize that, then you'll realize one of your entitlements are the truth. You deserve to know the truth. Secondly, because we are made in the image of God, to glorify God, to love our neighbor as yourself, therefore you are entitled to be loved by your fellow human beings, all of them. You see, that's another entitlement. So you see what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with entitlement as long as entitlement is founded upon truth. Now what you have in the world is that unbelievers, they hide the truth and they present their version of reality, their so-called truth, false information. And they create this, they imagine this regulation in their minds, which they call society. And in this regulation, they gave every human being a label, and now they enforce that label upon every human being. You see, that's all what a society is. That's all what civilization is all about, is by labeling human beings and traumatizing human beings to conform to the mental construction which you call society. It's all based on false information. Now, why does false entitlement lead to violence? I probably already explained it. Whenever you place yourself on the throne of God, you're not God, you're not capable of being God, so you don't have control, and you don't have all the knowledge and all the experience needed to be God. So you can't. The moment you decide to focus on yourself and not to give Christ the place he deserves in your life, the moment you do that, you're operating in a false entitlement, therefore you are violent from that moment on. Why? Because now, just like I said in part 1 of this video series, you are basically, you've made an object supreme, and now you demand everyone else to give the same supremacy to that object you're holding on to. And you only are using people to conform to your imagination. That's all you're doing. And because you feel entitled to do that, now you will lash out and find a way to take revenge upon everyone that doesn't agree with your, your imagination. I'm going to give examples of this. I'm using common examples that you guys might be familiar with. Let's say you have a child, okay? Because this begins in childhood. You have a man that slept with a woman and he got her pregnant. And the woman gave birth to the baby. That's the objective reality, okay? Now the baby needs attention and care till it's old enough to walk on its own, talk on its own, and move on its own. You see? That's how all human beings are. Now let's say that now one of the let's say that the man that impregnated the woman, let's say that he decides to have put a claim upon the life of that baby. You see? It's true that he is the biological dad of the baby. It is true that he's responsible to take care of that baby, but it's not true that he is entitled upon the life of that kid. It is not true that that kid now owes him his or her life. You see? So, but let's say that a man does claim the life of his offspring. Now he feels entitled to abuse them, to play God over them, and do whatever he wants because they are his. False information, false entitlement, that's violent, and there's discontent. See, that's how things operate. A false entitlement is associating yourself with something and attaching yourself with that association in an unhealthy manner. That's all what a false entitlement is. You see, every narcissist, because all unbelievers that refused the Holy Spirit, they turn into narcissists, they become reprobates. All narcissists associate themselves with objects, relationships, and items, but they attach themselves to those things. And that's their false entitlement. And that's violent because now they don't value anyone else. They are basically hating everyone unless people give in to their imagination. You see, you need to understand this clearly, that any form of false entitlement is satanic. Any form of false entitlement. It doesn't matter if 50 million or even 10 billion people would agree with something. If it's not based upon truth, it's false. Therefore, it's evil to hold on to it and to preserve it. You see? And one A common example of this are what we call nations. Okay, every nation that you'll find on earth is founded upon violence. No, let me say it more clear. Every nation you find on earth is founded upon scapegoating, murder, often genocide, and acts of cruelty. All nations are founded upon a false sense of entitlement, about false entitlement. And to enforce this, to protect this false entitlement, they harm others. So they're violent. And now the community agrees collectively to condone the abuse they've committed, and now they make up all kinds of stories to protect themselves from being caught. So now they form all kinds of taboos that, for example, in France, it can still be, as I've heard, it can still be sensitive to talk about the Algerian war. In Turkey, it's still taboo to talk about the Armenian and Greek genocides. In Germany, it's still sensitive to talk about the Nazi regime. You see, every nation has taboos. Why? Because it's a defect that they don't want to deal with. Because they know if we have to deal with this, our whole regulation would fall apart and things will get out of hand. Okay? So all nations are held together by false entitlement. So no nation on earth can be a Christian nation. The term Christian nation is an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. Okay? Because, let me be frank, every nation has satanic agreements in it. Whether you are from Portugal or you're from Sweden or you're from Korea or Japan, every nation is held together by a satanic agreement. That's why Jesus Christ said that when you become born again, the world will hate you. Jesus didn't say your nation will hate you. Jesus didn't say the people around you will hate you. The Lord said the world will hate you. Because the whole world, all nations, they have false entitlements which they protect with revenge. It's a broad way because it's easy. So when you become born again, you will have to let go of all those satanic agreements. And many of those agreements, you don't see them as satanic. You don't say, for example, the entitlements to privacy, for example. In most Western countries, we want our privacy. We don't want everyone to know everything about us. We want to be able to control what people know about us. You see? That's an entitlement we love to hold on to. But when you go to the root of it, when you go to the origin of that entitlement, it's false. Because it's founded upon the false information that human beings are sovereign. Or basically that what human beings tell about you, that's who you are. Because let's be frank, people. You don't want people to know everything about you because you're aware that people will condemn you or they will use information against you. So now, to avoid others from harming you, you want to keep a lot of information to yourself, and you want to control the information that's out there about you to basically manipulate people in treating you well and to get this stuff from people. First of all, that's walking in fear, and fear is not from God. Secondly, when you begin to use an advantage upon someone else to get something from someone, that's called witchcraft. Yes, I've said it. So the whole entitlement to privacy that people have is a false entitlement. And the whole agreement to protect the privacy of people that you have in primarily Western countries is a satanic agreement. And there are more of such things. So when you become born again, you have to let go of all those agreements, every one of them. That also implies that folks will begin to see you as a danger. Because listen, every satanic agreement is founded upon, every satanic agreement comes from false entitlement. And every false entitlement is violent. Okay? You see? And every false entitlement comes from false information. False information with false entitlements and satanic agreements, they all lead to discontent. You see? But folks love, folks are attached to the false information. Folks identify themselves with false information. So if you want to get rid of the oppression and all the violence that's the result of it, you need to get rid of the false information. And that's what many people don't want to do. Because many things will have to be revealed then, and that people people don't want those things to be revealed. Okay? Just know what you're into. You see, many churches, when you become born again, you go to that church, they'll basically keep you in a trance. They know that you have satanic agreements that operate in your life, but they will never tell you to be delivered from those satanic agreements. Instead, they will give you distractions that will make you addicted to that local church. Just like you have people going to bars and to clubs every weekend, the same way you have many millions of Christians going to church every Sunday to get relief. Satanic agreements are still operating in their lives. There's still false information, there are still false entitlements, therefore there's still discontent. You see, the local church, most of the time, those churches are led by Freemasons. And those people understand very well that if all those people would be delivered from false information, it would bring a lot of change on earth, but it also bring a lot of damage to the present world system. And things will get ugly then. So to prevent things from getting ugly, they choose to give their allegiance to Lucifer and to keep the Christians in bondage to the local church. Now, going to a local church is not a sin. I'm not saying that. But being attached and stuck to a local church, there's something wrong. You don't go every weekend to the hospital. You only go to the hospital when it's needed. If you have to go to the hospital every weekend for years, it means that you're not well. It means that you are in danger. Well, this video, this audio clip, it took about 18 minutes now. I hope I've explained clearly what I wanted to explain. I hope you understand it. If you have questions, you can put them below. I hope this audio series also gives you, it gives you a better view about what's going on. Because many people hold on to cliches that do reflect a bit of reality, but they don't want to go further than those cliches. They are comfortable with false information. I hope you're not. Well, that being said, I'll see you guys in part 5.